Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Don't You Dare, My Dear, by Charlie Lane. Narrated by Susan Duerden. Prologue. April 1st, 1817. Love could shatter in a moment. Fragile thing. Could flicker out like a candle flame, leaving only the faint whiff of smoke behind to remind those who'd held it once. A fleeting embrace of its existence. Why such dour thoughts shifted through the folds of Edmund's mind on such a sunny spring afternoon, Edmund could not say. Only that the sun-dappled leaves shaking in the breeze always reminded him of childhood picnics with his mother, and his mother always reminded him of love and of loss. He'd walked past this small garden in the centre of the square many times in the last month, but never stepped foot inside it. Shaded and fragrant, and bordered with some sort of flower which colour blazed from red to pink, it seemed like a pocket of time. Always spring or summer, and never those browning months when cold cinched round one's chest and tightened more each day. He shook his head, dislodging morbid thoughts and the chill that had settled across his shoulders like a bone-deep cloak, despite the warmth, the sun, the child's laughter echoing down the street. He may have lost his mother last year, but today he would gain a wife. All the love he'd learned about through his mother's stories, tales in which love could make a man, or even worlds, would find a home in her. Her, Mrs. Katherine Brighton, a widow with a wicked sharp tongue and eyes as grey as the sky before a storm. Behind him, the garden gate creaked, and he snapped the heels of his boots together. Time to stride up to her townhouse and lay his heart before her. "You've been out here for a quarter of an hour, Lord Escher. Are you well?" He turned, a sharp pirouette that launched a scowl onto his face.
"Mrs. Brighton, I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting."
In her pale, oval face, her large eyes scowled right back, like a lightning strike. Her fingers tangled in her lilac skirts. She preferred colours soft as clouds, wearing the muted shades of pinks, purples, blues and greens. Her dark blonde hair melted into the lightest, brightest brown, and her grey eyes changed tone slowly, like a sky melting from clear to cloudy over the course of an afternoon. Mrs. Brighton was a watercolour painting, a puddle of soft melting colours that soothed the soul, even when she scowled. Her fingers loosened, and she smoothed the wrinkles she'd made in her gown, her gaze dropping to watch her slow and steady work. "Are you brooding?" She kept her face angled low, but lifted her eyes to peer at him, grey peeking through the sooty black of her lashes.
"A bit."
He drew a line on the ground between them with the toe of his boot, then erased it, rubbing away all divisions, real or imaginary.
"But I'm well now that you are here."
She lifted her face to him fully, a martial gleam in her eye. "Humph! I am not a tonic for your illness."
"You are. A little glass bottle, pink, a bit golden when the light hits it, silvery liquid inside. I'm going to pop the cork and drink you down all at once. Then I'll be right as rain."
A thick, dark blonde eyebrow arched upward. He laughed, a bark that shook the leaves above.
"You're not a bottle, then, nor a tonic. What are you?"
She was a woman who took no nonsense, and he brimmed over with nonsense. An unlikely pair. "Your friend," she said. "Shall we retire inside? I finished the book you brought me last time, and look forward to hearing your thoughts."
"Yes, let's. But we cannot abandon our attempts to figure you out."
He stepped onto the path and headed toward the garden gate with a slow amble, waiting for her to join his side. "You're trying to avoid your foul mood from earlier."
"How do you know I was in a foul mood?"
She halted, tilted her head, and studied the sky through the leaves above. Her chin worked back and forth as if in deep thought. "There's a certain inward hollow of your shoulders when you're thinking of your mother, like a fallen tree." She whispered the last words, and they fell right on top of him, one by one, hammering him into the ground. He swallowed hard, and she lowered her face to scowl at him again. I came to tease you out of your doldrums. She tapped his bicep. Brooding is bad for you. Stop it.
If you wish. Her face softened.
Does it hurt much today, the loss?
He shook his head. Less and less every day, especially with her nearby.
I wish I'd been able to meet your mother. She sounds like perfection.
I wish it too. Her face brightened, watercolours turning to deep, rich oil paints.
But I've met you, and I think you must be a bit like her, all sunshine and laughter.
That may be the nicest thing anyone has said to me, and one of the many reasons he'd marry her. He moved toward the gate, his eyes glued to his boots. Tart one moment and sweet the next. You are a conundrum, Mrs. Brighton, but one day I will figure you out. She stepped into rhythm with his stride at his side, so close, a mere bump to the right would brush their bodies up against each other.
I'm already figured out, my lord. Have been for an age.
He opened the gate and ushered her onto the street. I disagree. You must be a fairy. No, a sprite.
I am a widow of 32 and of no consequence.
They stepped together onto the sidewalk before her front door, and he stopped her, his gloved fingers to her elbow. She turned just her head to gaze up at him, the question in her eyes. You are of all the consequence. Her throat bobbed, her lashes fluttered, as if pulled by a slow rope, then her chin returned to centre. Standing behind her, he could no longer see her face. Finally, she laughed, a tight sound, too highly strung.
That makes little sense, my lord, but what should I expect from one such as yourself?
She continued her path to her front door, and he followed. He'd always follow. You mean a viscount and a future earl? Meeting the wall of her door, she swung around and leaned her slender shoulders against it, her hands clasped behind her back, and she did not scoff, but her expression did. He ambled closer. Do you mean a handsome gentleman? Her eyes rolled up so far the irises almost disappeared. He stepped closer to her, then stopped and mimicked her posture with his hands folded together behind his back as if in prayer. He held her gaze, then dipped a little lower. Her grey eyes held him like a steel trap, and she did not flinch away from him. On a soft rise and fall, she breathed him in, and his gaze flickered to her lips. The palest pink around the edges, and the pink of the garden flowers, bright and glowing near the centre. Like the flower petals they were, fading from one shade to the other. He wanted them. He had to bite the inside of his lip to keep from drinking from them. Do you mean? His voice sounded like gravel, and he inhaled deeply to calm his gathering need. A man who... He inhaled again, wrinkled his nose. May have stepped in something rotten, or worse. His gaze dropped to his boots. He lifted one, nothing, then the other. Damn. A snort, a giggle. He jerked his head back up. Her face had broken open to reveal a sun behind those cloudy eyes. She doubled over in laughter, wrapping her arms around her waist. He forgot his boots and the refuse and just marvelled at her. This woman who seemed quiet and tame had a spine of steel and laughter like a summer rainstorm, unexpected and joyful, necessary. After 2 good minutes of hysteria, he pretended to check a pocket watch he did not have and said, It's not that funny, but it is that odoriferous. Her laughter rolled to a stop, but the corners of her lips still twitched. He wiggled his finger. You think I'm funny.
I think you having stepped in something foul is funny.
She gave in to the twitching, and her grin consumed her face, revealing small, even white teeth like little pearls. What would they feel like on the tip of his tongue? She leaned back against the door once more, with a sigh heavy with her contentment.
I do think you are funny. I cannot seem to help it.
He puffed his chest out. Precisely. It cannot be helped. I'm an entirely funny fellow. It's a mystery why you scold me so.
She lifted her hand and bit her thumb, her eyes growing distant. "It has often proved the best way to distract you from your grief. The more I scold, the more fanciful you get. And when your head flies into the clouds, well..." She shrugged, her gaze skittering away from him. "Your heart follows." The look she gave him was a caress so sweet, he wanted to enfold her in his arms and never let go. But her words wrapped around her actions, scolding to distract, teasing to delight. He needed her. She soothed him, countered him, saw his grief, and helped him live with it. He wanted to do the same for her, to ease her pains and give her everything he had, everything he was. Soon, patience. One didn't propose with shite on one's boots. He glared at the footwear in question, then inhaled, coughed on the scent of rotten vegetation, piss, and a hint of the Thames. What shite, quite literally perhaps, was he about to tromp into her house? He couldn't tell the woman he loved that he wished to marry her with such an odour wafting between them. Hardly romantic, that. He straightened his attire. Crisp white cravat, bottle green jacket, buff brown trousers, and befouled hessians, then spun away from her. "I'll return later." Her hand wrapped around his elbow, strong, warm, a cup of hot coals he'd gladly burn up in. "You do not have to do that." His muscles melted into the shape she desired, turning to face her. She tugged his elbow, then let it drop. "Follow me." "Anywhere," he murmured. She flashed him a smile, a shy yet bold look that darted straight to his heart, and parts lower. "Take your boots off and leave them there." She pointed down the servants' staircase. He felt a thundercloud gather on his brow. "You want me to converse with you barefoot? Too intimate, like a man in his bedroom with his lover or his wife. Also too humiliating. Miss Austen's heroes never proposed barefoot, and neither would Edmund. He did have his dignity, most days." Mrs. Brighton tapped his forearm, both brows rising, her lips pressing thin. She meant to intimidate him into obedience. "I see no reason for you to traipse all the way to your home and back for a bit of a pungent problem. Go ahead, take them off. I will not tease you if your feet are overlarge, or your stockings have holes." "I am a Viscount and a future Earl, Mrs. Brighton. My stockings are flawless." She shrugged, and the motion lifted the corner of her mouth in a wry smile. "Mine are a bit like lace at the moment. Should I remove my shoes so we are even?" "Yes. Delicate arches, elegant ankles. Yes." "Not necessary," he grumbled. He really should return home, but his feet would not budge from her side. He moved to the staircase and sat on the top step. With a tug and a groan and the use of his other foot, the first boot popped off and he flew backward, his head thunked against the ground. Mrs. Brighton gasped. "Edmund!" He squeezed his eyes shut, seeing stars, feeling the surprising strength of gentle hands on his head and his shoulders, finding himself engulfed in the heavy scent of rosewater and the feel of soft muslin. How could a thorn also be a rose-scented cloud? Another reason he adored her. Such an intriguing contradiction. He opened first one eye, then the other. She stared down at him, eyes brimming with worry. Her fingers pushed into his hair, testing the back of his head, pushing tendrils away from his eyes. "Does your head hurt? Should I call a doctor?" "If I say I am terribly unwell, on the edge of death, would you let me stay here, in your lap, for all my days?" The unexpected edge of surprise straightened her spine and sharpened her breath. "Scoundrel!" Her smile revealed her insult as a lie. It bounced with amusement. "You are well enough, I see." He grinned, and she pushed his shoulders until he sat straight up beside her. "Katherine," he moaned, "do have mercy on a poor injured soul." He rubbed the back of his head. A knot bloomed there. Smarted it did. Her body tightened, squared away like folded linen. "I know when to be soft, my lord." He leaned over his second boot. He tugged the hessian more carefully than he had the first,
and when it released his foot, he rocked back but did not fall. He left the boots on the stairs and stood, helping her to her feet. "Your gown is muddied." She twisted to inspect her backside.
"Oh dear, I see. I may never get that out."
Worried over a threadbare gown, when he could throw his odoriferous Hessians out and buy a new pair with nary another thought. Disgrace. Impulse moved him like a flash of lightning in a sunny afternoon sky. He snagged her hands and pulled her down the staircase into the cool shadows. "I'll buy you another." This was not how he'd intended to tell her. Barefoot and moody, lump on his head, and all of London up above within earshot. But the urge to let her know he loved her pressed against his lips and sang from his skin. He had to. He pressed his thumb between her brow, where lines of agitation grooved themselves onto her pretty face. He stroked his thumb down her nose, yearning to kiss the pert end of it.
"Lord Escher, your mood ever wanders in odd directions."
"The day we met, in the bookstore, I thought you the sweetest sight I'd ever seen. So pleased and distracted, and achingly lovely." The shadows could not hide the red spreading in a rush up her neck and across her cheeks.
"Lord Escher."
"Edmund. Call me Edmund from this day forward. I have come today to ask you a question." Her honeyed lashes fluttered down, hiding her storm cloud eyes.
"Edmund. And you will call me Katherine?"
He lifted her hand to his lips and spoke her name to warm her skin. "Katherine." She shivered.
"I should reprimand you, or some such, but I rather like it when you act oddly."
Her fingers twitched in his loose embrace. He swept them up for a kiss, and...
"Ah!"
A shriek rent the air. "What the hell?" Edmund hissed, pulling Katherine against his body. He'd take whatever bullet came their way before seeing her harmed. Katherine squirmed in his arms like an unruly kitten, found her freedom, and scrambled up and out of the servants' entrance, skirts hitched high.
"Christiana!"
She burst into the house, her sister's name keening from her lips. Edmund bounded after her and pushed through the door before it could slam closed in its frame. The shrieking continued, but now intelligible words accompanied the cacophony.
"Ah! A countess! Ah! I'm so happy, Thomas! So terribly happy! Eee!"
The squeals bounced off the walls and hit Edmund's already pounding skull like rocks. Katherine ran up a flight of stairs and threw open a door on the right.
"Chrissy, what has happened?"
Edmund followed 2 steps behind, bumping into Katherine, who stood like a statue just inside the parlour. Before them, a couple stood in an embrace. The woman was an ostentatiously beautiful blonde, with gleaming blue eyes, and every curve dressed to advantage in a low bodice and clinging skirts. Katherine's sister, Miss Christiana Quick. The man, tall but stooped, straightened from the kiss and dropped his hands from the woman's back. He stepped to the side and ran his hands through greying brown hair, his familiar brown-eyed gaze skittering away from Edmund. Edmund blinked, closed his eyes, rubbed them, opened them back up. Still the same man stood, sheepish, before him. "Father?" Edmund choked out. Miss Quick trotted forward and took Katherine's hands.
"You must congratulate us, sister. The Earl has offered for my hand in marriage, and I've accepted."
Katherine said not a word, as if she'd never learned to talk, as if her mind could simply not make sense of the scene before her, even if speech were possible. Edmund sympathized. He currently experienced the same difficulty. "What are you doing here, Father?" "The lady just explained, and in plain English. I'm engaged to marry Miss Quick." His father. Engaged. But Edmund had set out this morning purposefully along the path that would result in the same outcome. Betrothal to a woman living in this house. How had his father beaten him to it? And why? Edmund's question ricocheted off the walls, then fell heavy between them. Miss Quick gasped and fell back several steps, as if the loss of air propelled her backward. Her hands clutched at her breast.
"Your tone is so cold, my lord, and to your future mother."
Bile rose up in Edmund's throat.
Miss Quick had no more than 26 years, almost a decade less than he. His mother. He sought his father's still skittering gaze. I repeat, why? His father's face turned white and red and mottled pink. He stayed stone still, but worms seemed to wriggle just beneath his skin. Then he exploded, flinging forward with several heavy steps until he stood nose to nose with Edmund. That is not a question I am obliged to answer, son. Now, will you congratulate us, or continue acting like an utter buffoon? Edmund clenched his fists and breathed in. No need to feel rage boiling over such an unexpected occurrence. He forced his fists to open and breathed out. His father could marry as he pleased, widower that he was. He'd been lonely since Edmund's mother's death. Clenched fists and inhalation. A soft hand on his shoulder. Catherine's rose-water scent surrounding him. Lord Escher, perhaps you should sit down. Lord Escher. Mere heartbeats ago, he'd been Edmund. He'd been the hero, about to start his courtship. And now... La, Katherine. Miss Quick sauntered forward and swatted her sister's arm. You should call him nephew now. She circled around Edmund like a prowling cat. And you should call her Aunt Cathy. A smirk, a swish of her hips, and she returned to Edmund's father's side, draped herself on his arm, causing a blush to quicken in the man's entire face, from chin to forehead, ear to ear. Aunt. Nephew. Bloody hell. Miss Quick tilted her head to the side. You'll never have to marry now, Cathy. I'll need you when the children arrive. Her hand gravitated to her belly, caressed the flat plane. Catherine's hand on Edmund's shoulder tightened, fingernails digging through layers of wool and satin and linen to pierce his skin, his muscle, his very bone. Then it lightened, and her hand floated off him, and she floated away. How nice, Chrissy. I'm very happy for you. Her voice floated too, distant and out of reach. Edmund floated too, unsure. I'll return tomorrow, Katherine. She nodded, then shook her head and did not look his way, confused as he, and rightly so. Edmund turned on his heel and strode out of the room. Wait! His father lurched into the hall. Edmund, don't be angry. Edmund swung around. I do not wish to speak with you right now. He needed to think. What next? What would be expected of him? And he'd need to speak to Katherine, but not now, with the shock so raw. She needed time to think too. They'd meet again tomorrow and laugh over the entire debacle. He'd not have shite on his shoe, and they'd sit together on a cosy couch and continue the conversation they'd begun outside, when a sigh of a kiss across her knuckles promised so much more. He turned back to the stairs and jolted down them. Edmund! His father hissed, so close he felt his breath across his neck. Stop and speak like a civilized gentleman. Edmund continued his descent. Do you know why I came here today? What intentions I had? The same as mine, I assume. Edmund strode across the small foyer and out the door. Your intentions? No one knew you had intentions. You've met the woman once. His father followed, breathing heavy. You're not wearing shoes. Shite. Edmund stopped and paced to the servants' stairs. He plopped down and tugged on the offensive Hessians with brute strength, magnified by surging rage. He stood with nary a look for his hovering father and set off back down the street. Stop! Listen! His father's plea dragged his feet to a halt. He looked to the spring sky for patience and found none. What? Miss Quick wants a husband. Any willing man would do, but she angled for me. Came to see me after we met at the theatre with you and her sister. You should have seen her in our drawing room, in a threadbare gown, tears dripping out of those blue eyes, and down her pretty cheeks. I didn't want to be alone anymore. We both had something to offer the other. I offered her a home, money, and she offers me companionship. She's not your mother, Nothing like. We don't harbour romantic love for one another. But I've wanted to join your mother in her grave. And with Miss Quick, she's so young and vibrant. I feel like life is bearable again."
Edmund groaned. As the sound crept out of his mouth, it turned into a small scream he hurled at the sky. He scratched his hands down his face, growling, frustrated, helpless.
"Don't begrudge me a happiness, Edmund."
"Fine." He didn't begrudge anyone happiness. Everyone deserved an ever after full of love. His father craved companionship. Very well, he should have it. But what did his father's marriage mean for Edmund's? He stared up at the narrow townhouse. Katherine stood at a window. Aunt, nephew, laughable. He didn't give a rat's ass. He loved her, and he'd marry her. He gave her a smile. It wobbled, but it poured the truth of his heart out into the world for all to see, for her to see. Her eyes clamped closed, and her body racked. What the devil did that mean? His head pounding, and the bottom of his shoe wafting notes of refuse upward with every step, he pondered the answer. Felt like rejection, felt like loss, felt like an ending, but not a happy one. He could not let another day pass. He'd come here to achieve a goal, and he'd not let his father's inexplicable matrimonial plans disrupt his own. With a determined stride, Edmund returned to her door. Katherine walked on wobbly legs to the fireplace and fell into a faded seat. Though the grate had seen no heat in months, not even through the cold winter, Katherine and Chrissy had kept each other warm, huddled in bed under layers of blankets and pelisses and shawls. Chrissy had excellent warm clothing, good for a chilly winter's eve. Katherine's clothes had offered little help, worn thin as they were. She did so hate to leave the house in the winter months. Cold seeped into her very bones, but she'd been glad she had done so last month when she'd been unable to resist the allure of the bookstore. She would never have met Edmund otherwise. His warmth burned better than a pile of pelisses. What a muddle. She'd been positive Edmund had been on the edge of a proposal. The way he had kissed her knuckles and breathed her name. It spoke of intimacy and intention, and for the first time in years she had felt young again, had felt like a cloud made entirely of hope, and not whatever it was clouds were made of. Water, now she thought about it. Cold water that soaked through and left a lady shivering. How could he follow through after this afternoon's events? Taking an aging widow as a wife was one thing, but taking one's aged aunt as a wife was quite another. Thank goodness Chrissy had run off. To find her pile of La Belle Assemblée, she'd said. Katherine needed the quiet, the solitude, to think about what she'd come so close to and what to do now. Each stage of her life had been handed to Chrissy, a gift to a vulnerable girl with no steel in her marrow. Katherine had gladly given everything she was to the girl, and Chrissy had gladly taken. Now, though, Katherine wanted freedom. Edmund had been her means of acquiring it. A man who looked at her like that, as if she was an entire world and he was its only inhabitant. A man like that could give her a life worth living, and through the marriage, she'd have been able to provide for her sister as well. She'd married her first husband, Richard, for Chrissy's sake alone, needing to feed her sister after the money their parents had left to them had run through. Marrying Edmund would have been for herself, first and foremost, with the added benefit of feeding and clothing her sister too. But Chrissy had provided for herself this time. Clever girl. The Earl now would take charge of Katherine's sister, and a gutted, hollow void carved Katherine's chest into an empty bowl. What would she do with her life, now that it was hers to live, hers, and not her sister's? The empty bowl of her chest filled with warmth, and a solid purpose grew slowly, spreading its tendrils throughout her frame. She could do what she pleased, for the first time in her life. Katherine. Edmund's voice was so near, as if she'd conjured it.
Her heart stuttered in her chest, reached out for him. She...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?